ScriptLogic's Active Administrator is a comprehensive Active Directory management solution that focuses on Active Directory security, group policy management, and the backup and restore of Active Directory information, going beyond that of native solutions. In this brief demonstration, you will see how Active Administrator can be used to easily assess, assign, and audit Active Directory security, effectively manage the administration of group policies, and quickly restore Active Directory and Active Directory objects. Let's start by first taking a look at how we can assess, assign, and audit Active Directory security. The Active Directory tab within Active Administrator has a security focus to it that first off shows the permissions that are assigned without having to go to a right-click Properties Security tab of any given object, and instead, using color coding, will show the difference between an explicit permission, an inherited permission, one assigned by Active Administrator's active templates, and so on. But also gives you the ability to assess the permissions by finding permissions, doing an actual search of permissions throughout all of Active Directory, looking at the different accounts that might have been given permissions, the access types, either the explicit or inherited permissions, the generic rights like those you'd find on the Security tab, as well as extended permissions like those you'd find on the Advanced button under the Security tab, as well as specific object classes. And using these different sets of criteria, you can ask questions as specific as who has rights to this object or this OU, or you can even widen the criteria to say, show me everywhere that Bob has rights in all of my Active Directory. You can generate reports off that, and you're able to quickly assess the current state of your security. The second step, once you've assessed it, is to assign permissions properly. The challenge here, of course, is making sure that you assign permissions consistently throughout the enterprise. Utilizing Active Template technology, Active Administrator allows you to consistently assign those permissions. An active template, for example, this one here that says users unlock a user account, is nothing more than a definition of the specific permissions that would be granted. And then we can take that active template and assign it to a specific user or group and a specific location in Active Directory, thereby allowing us again to consistently assign permissions. So we've assessed and we've assigned, and the last part is to actually perform auditing of Active Directory. Utilizing an agent on each of the domain controllers, Active Administrator is able to consolidate all of the event logs that are related to Active Directory management and give you 5 sets of criteria here based on date range, the user involved, the type of event, the server that it occurred on, or some kind of description to see different events that have occurred. For example, changes to group membership, user accounts being created, passwords being reset, and so on. These can, of course, be generated into reports, which can be exported into one of 7 different formats, including PDF, HTML, CSV, and so on. So Active Administrator can be used to assess, assign, and audit the state of your Active Directory security. This applies to compliance standards or just if you're interested in securing your Active Directory as well. The second focus here of Active Administrator is to look at the effective management of group policies. We'll start with 2 different tabs. One is Group Policy Objects, where the focus is on the specific object and then seeing where it's linked to. You can, of course, navigate and edit it. It'll bring up the standard MMC snap-in and allow you to edit the GPO. But you'll note that you can, right off the bat, very quickly see things like the name, when it was created, modified, what the GUID is for it, and so on, without having to go into too much detail. There's also a Group Policy Objects by Container tab that allows you to see the different group policy objects, but more so in what you would see inside GPMC or in Active Directory users and computers. Active Administrator doesn't just stop there. It takes you far beyond that of native solutions. We start with the ability to have a group policy history. Because we're watching every change in Active Directory with the auditing, we're able to tell when a group policy is modified, and Active Administrator automatically takes a backup of that specific policy. So for every given policy, there is 1 or more backups. And if a change is made that adversely affects, let's say, 1,000 desktops, you could quickly pick the last version of it and roll back that specific policy into production. If there are 2 policies and you're wondering what the differences are, you could grab 2 policies and show changes and generate a report based on the changes between the 2. You could also edit one right here in the history if you chose to do so. Alternatively, you could use the Group Policy Offline Repository. This allows you to make changes to GPOs, but not have it be done in a live environment where it's going to affect machines directly. Instead, you can edit a GPO in an offline. You would check it out, Once it's checked out, like for example the development GPO, I could go ahead and edit it offline. And if I do that, it'll bring up the MMC snap-in, and you'll note that it says that it's an offline version of the GPO. You'd make changes to it, and once done, you'd go ahead and check it back in and apply the changes. As well as, if you wanted to, you could publish it back to Active Directory. The offline repository also allows a change management system in effect, using nothing more than native permissions. If you have read permissions to a group policy in Active Directory and you have Active Administrator, you can go ahead and copy it to the offline repository. You can check it out, and then you can go ahead and edit that policy offline. But because you only have read permissions, you have no ability to publish it back to Active Directory. So you could establish sort of a change management scenario where another person with write permissions to the group policy could come and take a look and report at the offline settings, compare the offline GPO to the live GPO to kind of validate the changes that were made and make sure that it's not going to have an adverse effect when pushed into Active Directory. And when they're ready, they could go ahead and that approving person could publish it to Active Directory. So effectively, the offline repository can be used as a change management system. There's also a resultant set of policies calculation, which looks much like what you'd see in a Group Policy Management Console from Microsoft. The one differentiating factor here is this last checkbox at the bottom here that says use the offline GPO repository to calculate an RSoP. With native solutions, you have some of these same abilities to say, if I pick a user and I pick a computer, and I can ask the questions like, what if I move the user? What if I move the computer? What if I change the security group affiliation? But you don't have the ability, which you do have with Active Administrator, you don't have the ability with native solutions to ask the question, what if I change a GPO? With Active Administrator, because you can include the offline GPO instead as part of your calculation, you can answer the question, what if I change a GPO? How will that affect production? So it's a very powerful solution for you. And then kind of tying up group policy management is the ability to have client-side troubleshooting, which this allows through Active Administrator the admin to connect to a specific machine and look at the group policy related event log entries and then see which policies are being applied and which are not. The last part of Active Administrator that I want to cover is the restoring of Active Directory and Active Directory objects. Go to the AD Object Restore to take a look at Active Directory objects first off. What we can do is we have it set up in Active Administrator the ability to back up Active Directory once a day or twice a day or on demand. And in order to restore, instead of having to go into Directory Services Restore mode, you can simply pick a date and time that you have an archive. You can search a find every object, or in my case, I'll just pick users, for example, and pick a specific user object in question that I'm worried about, let's say this object here, and I'm able to restore that object. If I had picked an OU, you'll see in this area down here, I can pick the object only, objects and all the ones that it contains, objects of a certain type, or only restore deleted objects if you want. So it's very flexible. Being that this is a user, I might also want to undelete a password. As long as you're running Windows 2003 Service Pack 1 and up, you can undelete the password as well. You'll also notice that you can establish passwords either specifically or random, as well as force the password change at the next logon by the user. You can alternately, instead of restoring the entire object or objects, you could restore just specific attributes of the object. So this is extremely powerful. Unlike native restoring, if you were to use Directory Services Restore mode, you'd be restoring an entire object, and you could be restoring it back to, let's say, last week's password. So, for example, if you were to restore an entire OU of computer objects, and you were to restore that OU from last week's backup, some of those machines that had their machine password changed and they wouldn't be able to join the domain. You'd have to literally disjoin and join them back to the domain. In the case of Active Administrator, you'd be undeleting that object live and in real time, and the password would be up to date, or you could establish what the password was if you wanted to. We also have the ability in Active Administrator to back up and restore security. Back up security separate from Active Directory objects. That way, if someone makes a number of changes, and I'm just going to grab a security file here, makes a number of changes to Active Directory, you can, and they don't remember what the changes are and it affects people's ability to manage it, you could specifically say, I'm going to back up, or excuse me, I'm going to restore some part of Active Directory security, and just restore the security, not the objects, just the security. And then the last backup and restore capability is the ability to back up and restore group policy objects. And we do that with the ability to restore quickly to alternate domains. You can restore the latest version of each GPO and so on. So you're able to quickly back up and restore GPOs as well, making them available. So Active Administrator, again, is a comprehensive solution. It's going to perform the assessing, the assigning, and auditing of your Active Directory security. It's going to comprehensively manage your group policies by use of having group policy history, the offline repository, the ability to do the resultant set of policies utilizing the offline repository, as well as the ability to quickly restore Active Directory objects, the security, as well as group policies.